So I'm just going to quickly set up a demo for how to configure Azure AD with Marketing Cloud SSO. So you no longer need to provide your user credentials to log on to Marketing Cloud, but rather can go through Azure AD as many larger companies have. It's an issue, it's an integration which has been a bit of an issue to set up previously for me, so I thought I would do a video of helpful for you and also for myself in future in case I forget. So for a beginning, you're going to need Marketing Cloud admin permissions. You're going to need admin permissions in Azure AD as well. You're going to need those accounts set up and ready to go. We're going to start off here from Marketing Cloud side, going into setup. And you're going to scroll down on the left-hand side here once it loads. Going to security settings. Here you're going to want to go scroll down. You're going to see SSO, SAML metadata. I'm just going to click download. For most of you, this will open in a browser window here. So just select the URL. That's all we need at the moment. At this point, we're going to go across into Azure AD. So Azure Active Directory is here. It's going to ask you what you'd like to do. We're going to select Enterprise Applications, and we're going to select a new application. Going to select non-gallery application. I'm just going to call this Salesforce Marketing Cloud Reseller, and click Add. It's going to create an application for us, and then we're going to do set up single sign-on. First thing I'm going to do is click SAML, and SAML is just the SSO which is supported for Marketing Cloud integration. We're going to do that via upload of metadata. You can do this manually if you have the settings, but the metadata file which we just grabbed basically has all the configuration you need, so you should be able to import that directly. Basically, you should be able to put it into here with a file name, and you should be able to click open. It should upload it. You can also obviously just download that file to your desktop and select it. I'm just a bit lazy in that sense. At this point, you can click add, and you'll notice all the configurations basically filled out for you that you need. One thing we will need to add is the sign-on URL. We'll come back to that in a second. I'm going to click save. I'm going to go look at the configuration that was set up by default. So you can see here that there's the identifier in the reply URL. We can see the username, attributes, and claims. What we're going to do is quickly change that one across to here. At the moment, it's the user principal name. It depends on your configuration. This could be different things. You can choose from employee ID. It really depends on what the configuration is, and your Azure AD team will know that. Usually, you're going to use the username or the email address as your identity. In this case, I'm going to choose mail, so that will be my email address. And I'm going to click save. Now, at this point here, we're able to go back to the application, so SAML sign on, and down here you're going to see the App Federation metadata ID. I'm just going to copy that link and then go back into Marketing Cloud. And once you're over here, what you'll see is that you're able to create a SAML key integration. So if we click Key Management here on Create, you'll see SSO. You may need to have a ticket open to Salesforce support to enable this, and you can only have one per instance. I'm going to click Azure here, call whatever you like. I'm going to select fetch metadata from URL since I have the URL here, and then I'm going to click fetch metadata. That will go and get all the metadata from Azure, and hopefully in an ideal world you would just click save and everything would work. It's not an ideal world, and unfortunately, some of the metadata that's from Azure is not compatible with Marketing Cloud. The reasons for that I'm not sure about. This one here in particular, name format, is because there's a tag missing. If you open up just an editor like Visual Code, you can do this and format the document. So basically this just formats it. And you'll notice that there's one thing missing, as the error message kind of was telling you, name ID format. So if I then go in here and say, okay, where's the tag with name ID? It really doesn't show up anywhere. So what we need to do is to actually add that tag. You can see here this IDP SSO descriptor tag. Inside of there, I usually just put it above the single sign out service. You're going to just add that as a tag. And then you might ask, okay, well, what values do I need to put in there? Well, it's not that hard. If you just go to the Salesforce documentation, in this case, the one here, if you just search for Salesforce Identity Providers Marketing Cloud, or put a name format ID or name ID format and search for Marketing Cloud, you'll be able to find it. But this is actually the value that usually I use. You can add all four of them if you like. It's not going to make a difference, especially if you're sending across an email address as your claim. It shouldn't cause any issues just using the email address format. Now, I'm going to take that one and I'm going to go to Marketing Cloud. We're going to change this to paste metadata, and I'm just going to drop in that metadata and click Save. And you'd think that hopefully that would work, but it doesn't. And there's actually another reason, is that there's a tag too much, which is coming from Azure, which is the single logout service here. And if we go back into the metadata we just looked at and I try and search for that, you'll notice that that was actually just below where we did the last change. So then we can just delete that binding and we can select the details again, paste that in, and that should work fine. Everything here is now saved. So actually the keys are accepted and all the details in the metadata have been uploaded. What we're going to do now is we're going to enable SSO. So we'll need to go back into the security settings. I'm going to click Edit. And down here, you'll be able to see single sign-on. You just need to make sure that that's enabled. The second one is identity verification. This is the two-step thing where the token gets sent to you. You can turn that off. A lot of people will have that already built into their single sign-on, so you don't need it. It's really up to you as to if you want to keep that on or off. Can click save. The security settings are saved. And now what we're going to do is actually just go and grab this SP initiated link. Now what this is the service provider initiated link. So this is the kind of the link where we need to start the login. I'll show you what that means in a second. So if you just want to copy that link URL and we jump across to Azure, I told you that there's one piece that we're going to add in, the sign-on URL. So we go into here, click Edit, and we'll put on the sign-on URL like that. Click Save. All done. Now, before we go forward, we're going to need to configure a user so that we can actually run a quick test. So we'll go back into Marketing Cloud, go to Users. I'm going to go in here to SSO. I just created a test user already. And I'm going to click on this guy and then click Edit. And you can see down the bottom here, this is just because it was already created. I've just got a federation ID. Now this is the email address of the user that I'm using from Azure. Again, each user will be different, and you could use other IDs such as employee ID depending on what claim you send in. The key thing to remember here is that it's either or. So either you have SSO on or you have username password. You can't have username password working and SSO like you would in Salesforce. It doesn't work like that with Marketing Cloud. So please make sure that whenever you're doing this that you have at least one user which is not using SSO. So that in case there's something wrong with the SSO provider, someone accidentally deletes the configuration, you can still actually access Marketing Cloud and then change all those users back. Once this is enabled, you just want to go in and click Save, and that will basically be ready to go. And we're good. And so we're going to now go to the Azure page, and we can say, okay, we're happy with the configuration, everything looks good. Let's do a quick test. So because the Azure user is the same one as the one I'm going to use for my login here, I can just click login as current user. And that will just basically run through a quick test just to make sure everything's working as expected. And this one here, the first response that you're going to get, this is related to the fact that the user is not in the group. So the problem is that I haven't assigned myself to the application yet, so that it doesn't allow me to use it. Normally your Azure teams will be aware of how to assign the groups, so I'm not going to go into that. In this case, it's really helpful setting up the configuration. I can just click fix it and it assigns that group to me right away. I'm just going to refresh the page. It sometimes takes a second for Azure settings to apply, so you may have to bear with me for a second. see here, it's all good. I'm gonna click test. Sign in as current user again. That's still not assigned the user properly. And it failed because it's already assigned, so it should be working now. Let's just refresh the page again. I'm not sure if refreshing the page actually makes a difference. It just seems to take a couple of seconds for these kind of things to apply. Let's run a test again. Oops. Okay. It's not assigned the role for the application. Yep, we know. We had that here. Fix again. Still doesn't work. Unfortunately. Yeah, that's all fine. Test this application. Great. So here we can see that the user that's gone through, the user ID, is for here, Doug. Everything looks good. You see we've now logged into the test user. If you see an error that's asking about a federation ID not found, it's possibly two main things. Either there's nothing with the federation ID available, so maybe I misspelt the name. Capitalization can sometimes be an issue, so make sure it's exactly the same. And the other issue is quite often the case that the claim is different. So if your team is setting up the claims attributes in here, like I did, I changed it to email, the user.mail. You may need to use something else. Just make sure, double check with your Azure team what's being used here for the format so that you can run some tests. Now that's all fine. All the integration then is working in the test that I did, but how does that actually work for an end user? Well, unfortunately, I don't have an Office 365 account, so I can't set that one up for you. But what you will notice in here is that if I try now to log in using this username here, it actually won't work. So I actually, that's the wrong spelling, 1 second. Normally what you would expect on Salesforce would be something like this, and you click next, and then it would say, okay, you can actually log in via SSO. That doesn't happen in Marketing Cloud at all, unfortunately. So what will happen is that you might have users who try and still log in with this, and they still might log in with their password. If you click this, actually what's going to happen is it's going to say it doesn't work, or some other error is going to pop up. I'm not exactly sure if this is even the right password for this user, but it won't let you go any further than this page here because there's no ability for you to set that up. So the question is then obviously, how does that work? Well, there's two main ways. As I mentioned, if we go into security settings, you have this SP, so service provider initiated link. This will work the same way. So if I copy that, I can jump into here and I can just pop that in and it will automatically forward to Azure, does the login, and then forwards through to Marketing Cloud. So that's one way. We also did that in Azure, right? So we already set up the fact that that's the login URL. So what we can also do is actually use some of those links. And what you could say is this guy here. You can copy the clipboard. This one here is one that could be used. You may want to have another application like portal.office.com. If you've got Office 365, you can actually add those applications there, or some other kind of application list where you can just copy that. And instead you can put in the URL here to the account. That one's not working as I expected. I'm not sure which one that is. Your Azure team should help with it. I'm not sure if that's actually this one here. That's what I thought it was, but maybe it's not, and maybe I misunderstood from the team that I was talking with before. But that should be fine. In general, you should be able to get a link, which also works for your app here. Maybe it's in here. Let me just check that. A user access. It's this one here, I think, actually. So if you click user access URL, this one. Yes. Okay. So this is the one here, going into properties, access URL. And what this will do is basically then enable you to log in using the Azure link rather than the service provider link from Microsoft. Again, that's up to your team how they provision application access. So unfortunately not perfect in Marketing Cloud side, but it certainly is the way to go forward for your SSO to help making sure that anyone who has their access removed is actually removed from the system. Looking forward to your comments. Got any questions, please feel free to ask, and thanks very much.